Yo, 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 what is going on, RoK Familia? It is your boy, BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder. And today we are going to be discussing a great topic. I actually had this question that was posed to me in our RoK Jumper project section on my Discord. And the question essentially was, hey, why don't we just merge, right? Given we're still recruiting and we are getting closer to being ready and prepared in my eyes. And I thought to myself, this would be something great to touch on. So today that is going to be the topic, is going to be discussing the pros and cons of doing jumper project merges, and then give you kind of my general opinion at the end. With that being said, if you enjoyed the content, make sure you sub, like, ring the notification bell, and of course, if you want to join and be a part of our conversation, hit up the Discord. You can find a link to that in the pinned comment description down below. Okay, let's start off first with the pros. Pros for doing project merges would be you're gaining more members, you are gaining more management staff. This could mean more officers to fill alliances. This could be leaders, so that way you can make more alliances within your project. Maybe you can fill current alliances in your project. Maybe you have enough leaders, but you just don't have enough personnel, right? So maybe you can fill the current active alliances that you do have with players that are coming in from merging. You're going to be able to boost activity within the group / within the server. Well, that kind of bleeds into engagement as well. And I think kind of morale. You'll be able to boost some of these things because of that. You may even be able, as a number 6, to possibly push up your start date. Maybe now, after doing a merge, you guys are pretty much ready. You feel confident having a minimum number of people that you've recruited. You've met some of your goals and targets, and you're ready to go ahead and pull the trigger. So you can start a little sooner. So those would be, I think, some of the important bits of when you're doing a project merge, or if you're considering doing merges. Now let's discuss some of the cons. So I think some of the cons of doing merges are that you can sometimes forfeit leadership or forfeit your percentage, your influence within the overall group. Number 2, oftentimes when you're doing merges, unless they are kind of a disproportionate ratio, right? If your group is 100, and you have a group that's coming in that has 30 players, right? You're kind of assimilating them, which I would argue is a little bit different than possibly doing a merge, even though you could argue it is the same. It's just semantics at that point, word usage. But that really comes down to, let's say you have 2 groups that are merging together and they each have 100 players. The challenge is that in those situations, there's a very high percentage chance that you're still going to have this group and that group, even though you're in a union. And that can still cause internal struggles where you have loyalty on one side and loyalty on another side. And even though you're hoping that leadership and your management teams between one another can still figure it out, obviously, if depending on how they decide, if they're going to keep kind of a standard council system, maybe they have the 2 leaders for each of the 2 reps from each group that are kind of going to be your 2 heads of state or heads of the group. Again, there's different ways that you can obviously approach it, but that I would say is probably whatever I mentioned, my number 3 or my number 4, on just understanding these things can happen, and those can create challenges within your the project after you've merged. Number 5 would be that when you're doing another thing from merging is that you really have to be sure that you are vetting people appropriately, right? You want to make sure that you guys have similar views, similar goals in mind, because if you don't, that can also be something else that can cause rifts down the line. If your project's goals, the way that you guys want to manage the kingdom, the way that you're looking to manage events, how you're going to do PvP, how you're going to do MGEs, everything, right? You pretty much have to, look behind each other's curtains, if you will, and see, exactly what see what each group is offering. Because if you do not line up near 100% To me, that's a red flag. That can cause more problems down the road, even if you may not think it does. And this is one of the things, right? I think number 6 kind of comes down to, it's like the appearance of merging. It's, oh, wow, merging is going to solve all our problems. And more often than not, it actually can create more headaches because most people aren't really taking time to think about what it means to do a merge. And number 7, I'll give you my example, right? When I started my first couple projects, I was getting offered to merge all the time. As my group kept growing and growing and growing, kept getting offered. Once I started kind of getting into like the 200 to 300 range, offers kind of started dwindling down and getting smaller. And most of the time it's because groups, usually when they're looking to do merges, typically will try to do them with smaller projects, right? Like we said before, if I have 100 people, I might want to try and look for groups that are 20, 30, 40. If I'm 200, maybe I'm looking for 50, 60, 70, 80. Right? Or 100, right? Just something smaller than mine. Because typically when you're doing that, you're kind of at this, you have a little bit more leverage, right? You're at more of a position where you don't have to give up as much because you have more to offer. You're bringing more to the table. And again, sometimes that can be a good thing. Sometimes maybe it can be a bad thing. Again, it really just depends on the group that's coming in, how that current leadership thinks. But these are some of the cons of doing it. It's one of the reasons why I've never taken anyone up on a pure merge before. We have done something where it's been more of an allyship that was formed with 2 groups still operating independently, but we just had similar goals in mind. That was one thing. However, it only lasted about a week or 2, and then as our group basically got to about twice the size of the other group, it's just they're just like, you guys are too big, or not. We don't want to do that. We're just going to go to our own kingdom. But now, we said that's cool, no problem. So, again, my overall thoughts on everything, if I was to conclude here at the end, is to say that my personal view is that I would never do a project merge. The reason being, one, because I'm just confident in knowing that what I'm offering and what I'm bringing to the table is unique compared to other projects. I don't really know any other projects that operate in the same way that I do. So that kind of is more of a stopgap at that point, just because it is different than the majority, if not all others. And then number 2, it's that, I feel confident in knowing what I'm bringing and what I'm going to be able to do for a group. So, I just don't think there's a high percentage chance that I'm going to find another group or another person that I would have a high chance of connecting with. It doesn't mean that it can't happen. It just means that I just haven't found a situation like that before. And I'm also not actively going out and searching for merges. But again, I just think that there's just too many cons that outweigh the pros when it comes to looking to do a merge. And it's just more of a kind of, I almost want to say it's an easy way out. Kind of similar to how you might feel people doing merges in a kingdom, if it's big groups. I think some things can be appropriate. I think some things can be necessary. And I'll leave you with one other example. You can do a merge, and you could bring on a small alliance, right? Let's say you have an alliance. Let's say there's a group of 30 or 40, right? They're basically enough to fill an alliance. You can have that group come into your project, and they merge into you. But they're still their own alliance because they've retained their leadership, they've retained their core players. Maybe it's an alliance from an older kingdom that is just doing a restart project and they're thinking to themselves, man, we'll just go join this group and we can benefit. But who knows if they're going to be loyal, they're going to do their own thing later. Again, there's just a lot of factors to really consider. So those, amongst all the cons I mentioned, are the reasons, along with my personal, those are the reasons I would just never advocate or recommend people to do project merges. I recommend you sticking it through and recruiting, regardless of how long it takes, and seeing what you can do with a project. So mainly, especially if it's your first, let me preface that, because that will allow for you to gain some experience, gain some knowledge, and then decide for yourself, okay, hey, I've tried this out myself. I really got it to a point where I thought we had a very high percentage chance of being successful in the project, of kind of getting what we were looking for when we landed in the final kingdom. Was it able to happen? Was it not able to happen? And then you can kind of go from there on. Maybe next time, we may be more open to doing a merge, or maybe we'll look to try and bring people on in that way. But my thing is, merges sometimes can cause more headaches, or I should say more often than not, can cause more headaches than they can really be solutions. So just really take the time to think about those things before you consider doing them. With that being said, I'm going to pose the question to you before we sign off, which is, if you are someone who has been a leader, a project lead, if you've been a leader of an alliance within a project, if you're someone who just followed a merge really closely from one project to another, whether it was 2 projects merging or more than that, I want to hear from you. How did it go? And then what were the sizes, right? Was your group 200 and theirs was 50? Was it 100 to 100? Was it 200 to 200? Right? What was compromised? What wasn't? How did it go, right? Did it play out all the way to Final Kingdom? And if so, how did it go? I'd love to hear. So let me know in the comments down below. That is it for me. And as always, until next time, I'll catch you later.